Hey, what's up, everyone? So today I'd like to talk about specializing in openings. So the topics today that I'd like to cover would be exploring openings, selecting openings, and preparing openings. So before you even, go into specializing in openings, first of all, you need to explore some of these openings, and that could mean playing quite a number of games before you finally find a few openings or even like a set play that you are so comfortable with that you can internalize and specialize in. So the first phase is often exploring openings. So for me personally, in my first year of playing Othello, I did 10,000 games in my first 3 months. But of course, that was when I was exceptionally free, when I was just coming out from I think my conscript army, and I was going into the university, or some of you guys, for some of you guys, it would mean going into college. So the period before going into college, in between working part-time jobs, I had quite a bit of time, and I was learning Othello. So what I really did there was to kind of be like what I would like to call a farmer in Othello, and I basically played more than 10,000 games. And during that process, I was exploring various openings, playing all sorts of different openings or goofy moves without even knowing what I was doing. But as I was playing, I found out that there were certain openings that seemed to work well against humans, human players at least, and some of the openings that might have tricks involved. So this is very important in the learning process for you. And of course, I would say, although it's great to be maybe a very specialized player, maybe if you are a Japanese player and you are in Japan, there are tons of resources telling you what's the most efficient way to winning in Othello. But I would say that sometimes before you really want to go into an expert level, you want to really play the field, explore what's available, just try different things. I think that probably applies to various things in life as well. You probably want to explore all the different options before you kind of commit yourself to maybe even a career. So yeah, it's good to kind of understand the differences before you explore, before you actually specialize into the openings. You explore various openings, and then finally, when you reach a point where you are, you want to achieve a higher win rate, you want to kind of so an interesting anecdote. I first started my World Othello Championship journey back when I was in university. I think just maybe 3 or 4 years into learning Othello, I went for my World Othello Championship, the very first one, 2011 in Newark, New Jersey. So back then it was in a Hilton hotel. And when I arrived there, because I was still, in my university semester while doing my final year project, I actually flew across and went over for the tournament just a day before the tournament. So I'm in Singapore, and flying to New York gave me a huge jet lag. And when I was playing the first day, I was basically playing through a massive headache while trying to think through sequences. And of course, in general, the World Hotel Championship involves 7 rounds on the first day, 6 rounds on the second day, and typically it's very, very taxing for each game if you were to always think through all of these moves via just pure brain power or pure brain processing power. So yeah, at the end of the day one, I basically just kind of collapsed mentally on the bed because I was thinking too hard, and at the same time dealing with massive jet lag. I think I slept at 7 p.m. and woke up at 3 a.m. unable to continue sleeping, something like that. So the second day, of course, was slightly better in terms of the headache, but I still had to play through like quite a bad and heavy situation. So I would say that that definitely affects your performance. So this is something to keep in mind. So if you were to have a specialized opening that you can rely on, that you know inside out, you wouldn't really have to think so hard on each and every game just to try to grind out a win. But instead, you can have an opening that you know at the back of your hand without even thinking. You have certain rules, you have certain patterns that you follow, and that would definitely help you in even tournaments. So specializing in openings is definitely a lot more efficient uh, a way of playing. Of course, I would say that some of the players who like to play creative, they would say specializing too much takes the joy out of playing Othello, and just exploring the game each time. So another point is about selecting openings. How can you select openings? So first of all, you can probably play a wide range of openings. You can first observe your win rates of these openings and try and figure out which one is brings you more success, or at least that's what I hear from the top world players. They typically pick openings that are uncommon, in general, and at the same time, they are also comfortable and in playing it, and they know the moves intuitively, and at the same time, they get quite a lot of win rate during practice. And of course, there is this notion about if you specialize in openings, and if everybody knows who you are online, they basically know what openings you specialize in. So there is this notion about secrecy when it comes to trying to practice these openings online, because you don't want anyone to know who you are when you play this. And of course, there are so many nicknames online that plays huge number of games, and we have no idea who they are, because they could potentially be top Othello players in the world who are just practicing certain openings and didn't want people to know that they are practicing these openings. So yeah, that could be the case. So if you want to do that, by all means, go ahead. Personally, I don't really do that. I just play using my usual nick. So that perhaps is also a vulnerability of some sorts, I guess. People know my game inside out. So another point, or the last point that I like to cover in terms of specializing in openings, is preparing these openings. So usually when you prepare these openings, you have to really prepare them in depth. So the most common opening that I like to use is Shaman, because it's an opening that deviates early. So back to the second point, if you're able to choose an opening that deviates early, you typically kind of wrong foot your opponent early on in the game. Your opponent can't really go into the branch that maybe he or she has prepared deeply for. So one of the openings is Shaman, which is the typical rose opening, and almost everybody, maybe according to SEO archive app, I think based on the stats, probably 99% of people play this sequence out against the rose opening. And of course, typically, if we go into c4 and your opponent plays f6, then it would go into the standard rose opening sequence. But instead, if you were to do an early variation, be it f5 going into Iago, maybe c6 is Shaman opening, g4 is also a very early variation that people may not know. This is called the Baguette Opening. So definitely when you prepare the openings, you need to have a few points down. First of all, you need to have quite a number of games under your belt. You need to know all of these patterns. And of course, when you play a number of games against human players using this opening, you know what's the most popular response from your opponent. Of course, the shortcut way would be to just go into Tor database and pull out all the World Othello Championship games or other championship games and try to see what's the typical response from humans. So of course, humans would probably choose between all of these positive moves if they know the opening. If they don't really know the opening, try to switch off these ratings and try to derive, certain moves that your opponent might make. But they often tend to overlap pretty much, because this is flipping one disc, one disc, one disc. These are also flipping all one disc in one direction. So that's the typical. And this would be one disc in one direction as well, but it's fairly dispersive. You probably allow black to regroup too easily. So relatively to the other moves, it may not be as good. So, and of course, E2 to D2 is just more dispersive in nature. So most likely you wouldn't expect your opponent to actually play this. So when you're preparing openings, you also want to anticipate, how your opponent may respond to, or is most likely to respond to, and prepare those lines. So if let's say I expect E7. I expect up to this stage, it's still early in the opening. Everybody knows the opening. Everybody would play E7 given that they know that's the best move, or most of the people would do that. Then I would then be kind of conscious to prepare that I should definitely know, F5 being a centralized move is good. Flipping two discs in one direction, and this is flipping one disc in one direction. These are telltale signs of good move. G5 is also flipping one disc in one direction, but it's fairly dispersive. The disc that I flip is exposed to so many squares and playable moves for white to just regroup into the center. So these are kind of aspects that you have to think about when you want to specialize in openings and you want to anticipate whether this particular opening would be effective against human players. You want to kind of have a relative measure to see whether this opening would be effective in general. So I would say that when you're preparing openings, try to keep that in mind. And I would say also that there are certain openings that are fairly effective against novice or low level players or mid level players and even expert players or world class players. So you really have to kind of know the difference. Of course, world class players are like entirely different monsters. They probably they either know all the openings or they are able to derive most of the best moves against any given opening. So for uh, games against world class players, I would advise that you have a very deep opening, and the opening shouldn't deviate more than -2 against them. I think the general guideline that Brian Rose's book recommended is not to deviate more than -4. So I think most players would tend to prepare openings or select openings within a -4 boundary. But I would say that if it's something that you really specialize in, even a -6 or -8 is still playable. But when you reach double digits, somehow most of the moves are very easily countered by your opponent. So probably you wouldn't want to go into the double digits unless you're really, really confident that that trap may potentially, lure your opponent into a huge mistake. So I think that's all the tips that I have for you today in terms of specializing in openings. As you advance your game, it's time to start thinking about specializing in openings because when you specialize in opening, if you were playing tennis, for example, it's basically preparing a set play. You know that you're going to serve out wide or you're going to serve down the T line and you're going to put your opponent out of position. Where is your opponent going to return to? And you can immediately kind of anticipate and set yourself up for a smash or an immediate extreme, return shot, baseline shot right to the other extreme end. So I think that's pretty much the same thing that you want to prepare for. And I think this is extremely useful when it comes to blitz gaming when you play 1 minute blitz games on Othello Quest. So I think yeah, if you want to specialize in openings, do a lot of preparation, do a lot of exploring, select the best openings that work for you. So having said that, I'd like to thank you for joining me in this episode today, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.